The transport ship landed on Kepler 442b with a loud crash of metal against rock. Dust clouds swirled around the mining station as the engines powered down. Commander Zethkar watched from his office window, his massive scaled hands folded behind his back. The Draconian stood nearly 3 meters tall, with dark green scales that gleamed under the artificial lights. Today, the first human work group would arrive at his station. The airlock hissed open, and 12 humans stepped out onto the metal platform. They looked small compared to the other alien workers. Zethkar had worked with many species during his 40 years in space mining. Krillians were strong like bears, and could lift heavy equipment with ease. The insect-like Vexithari could crawl into tight spaces and fix broken machines. Even the floating Etherians had useful mind powers for moving objects. But humans? Zethkar had heard they were weak. Soft skin, no natural weapons, poor night vision. He wondered why the Mining Council had decided to hire them. Dr. Sarah Chen led the human group across the platform. She carried 2 bags and wore the standard blue mining uniform. Her black hair was tied back, and her dark eyes looked around the station with interest. Behind her walked the other humans. Engineers, mechanics, and scientists. But what caught everyone's attention was the small black creature riding on Dr. Chen's shoulder. "What is that?" asked Gorak, a massive Krillian whose brown fur covered arms as thick as tree trunks. He pointed one clawed finger at the tiny animal. The creature was completely black, except for white paws. It had pointed ears, bright green eyes, and a long, thin tail that twitched as it looked around. The animal was maybe 40 centimeters long and could not weigh more than 4 kilograms. "This is Pixel," Dr. Chen said with a smile. "She's my cat." Cat? Zethkar had never heard this word before. "A companion animal from Earth," Dr. Chen explained. "She helps with pest control and provides emotional support." Several alien workers had gathered around to stare at the small creature. A group of Vexithari clicked their mandibles together, making the sound they used for laughter. Their compound eyes reflected rainbow colors as they studied the cat. "This tiny thing is supposed to help with pest control," buzzed Klixtar, the head Vexithari. "It looks like it would lose a fight with our food dispensers." More laughter came from the crowd. Gorak's deep voice rumbled with amusement. "On my homeworld, our younglings play with creatures bigger than that." What kind of pests could something so small possibly control? Dr. Chen's smile did not change. "You might be surprised. Cats are very effective hunters. On Earth, they catch billions of small animals every year." "Small animals," repeated Zethkar. "Like what?" "Mice, rats, birds, insects, anything that moves quickly and tries to hide." The Krillian workers burst into loud laughter. They slapped their massive hands on their knees and shook their shaggy heads. Even some of the normally quiet Etherians showed signs of amusement, their translucent forms glowing brighter. "Mice and rats," Gorak bellowed. "Human. We have ironback crawlers in our cargo holds. They have armor plating and poison claws. Your little pet would make a nice snack for one of them." Pixel, meanwhile, had jumped down from Dr. Chen's shoulder and was exploring the platform. She sniffed at various objects, her nose twitching. When a small maintenance drone rolled by, she crouched low and watched it with intense focus. Her pupils grew wide, and her tail moved back and forth slowly. "Look at it," whispered Vorthran, an Etherian whose body shimmered like blue smoke. "It acts like the drone is prey. How adorable!" More chuckling sounds came from the assembled workers. Word was already spreading through the station about the humans and their tiny companion. In the mess hall, alien workers would soon be making jokes about the mighty human predator beast. "Doctor." Chen picked up Pixel and continued toward the station entrance. The cat's green eyes scanned everything around them, taking in details that the aliens could not see. Her ears swiveled to catch sounds beyond the range of alien hearing. Inside the station, Commander Zethkar gave the humans a tour. The facility was huge, with metal corridors connecting different sections. There were sleeping quarters, work areas, equipment storage, and food preparation zones. Massive mining machines sat in the main garage, waiting to dig deeper into the planet's surface. The station has been running for 5 years, Zethkar explained. We mine rare metals from the deep caves. It is dangerous work, but profitable. Your job will be to study the local environment and help us work more safely. Dr. Chen nodded and took notes on her tablet. Behind her, the other humans asked questions about air recycling, power systems, and communication arrays. They seemed competent and professional, but their eyes kept returning to the small black cat. Pixel had climbed onto a supply crate and was watching something in the shadows near the ceiling. Her body was completely still except for the tip of her tail. She looked like a statue carved from black stone. What is it looking at? Asked Drixnor, a young Vexisthari. Probably nothing, said Clixtar. Small brains see threats everywhere, but Pixel was not imagining things. High in the metal beams above their heads, something moved in the darkness. It was fast and silent. Darting between support structures, the aliens could not see it, but Pixel's eyes tracked every movement. The station had a problem. For the past month, small items had been disappearing. Food packages, spare parts, even entire maintenance drones. The missing items were always small, always taken from storage areas, and always vanished without leaving tracks. Security cameras showed nothing. Motion sensors detected no movement. It was as if the items simply ceased to exist. Commander Zethkar had theories. Maybe the storage computers were malfunctioning. Maybe some workers were taking supplies for personal use. Maybe the Etherians were playing pranks with their mind powers. But he was wrong about all of these things. High above in the shadows, something with many legs and glowing eyes watched the humans. It had been avoiding the aliens for weeks, stealing what it needed to survive. The creature was intelligent enough to stay hidden and patient enough to wait for the right moment to strike. It had no idea that its greatest enemy had just arrived on the station, riding on the shoulder of a human scientist. The tour continued, and the aliens kept making jokes about the tiny cat. They did not know that on Earth, cats were responsible for driving dozens of species to extinction. They did not know that these small predators had reflexes faster than striking snakes and hearing sharp enough to detect a heartbeat from across a room. They did not know that they had just invited death into their station, wrapped in black fur and carried in a human's arms. Pixel purred softly as Dr. Chen scratched behind her ears. To the aliens, it sounded like a quiet, harmless rumble. They had no idea it was the sound of a perfect killing machine expressing contentment. 3 weeks passed since the humans arrived at the mining station. The jokes about Pixel had not stopped. If anything, they had gotten worse. In the mess hall, Krillian workers would point at the small black cat and laugh loudly. Look! The mighty human warrior approaches, Gorak would announce whenever Pixel entered a room. The other Krillians would pretend to cower in fear, covering their massive heads with their hands. The Vexthari created elaborate stories about Pixel's hunting adventures. They would gather in groups and tell tales of how the tiny predator stalked dangerous dust particles and engaged in epic battles with falling leaves. Their clicking laughter echoed through the corridors. Even the usually polite Etherians joined in. Vorthran started a game where workers would bet on how long Pixel could survive against various station hazards. 10 credits says the air recycling fan would defeat the mighty beast, he would say, his blue form shimmering with amusement. Dr. Chen endured all of this with patience. She continued her work, studying soil samples and atmospheric readings. When aliens made jokes about her cat, she would just smile and nod. Sometimes she would say, "Pixel earns her place here." But nobody took her seriously. The humans had been assigned quarters in Section C of the station. It was a quiet area with smaller rooms and narrow hallways, perfect for a small cat to explore. Pixel spent her days sleeping on Dr. Chen's bed, playing with loose cables, and watching the world through the small windows. To the aliens, she looked completely lazy. She slept for 16 hours each day, curled up in warm spots around the station. When she was awake, she would stretch slowly, clean her fur, and then find another place to nap. "I have seen rocks with more energy," Clixtar told his Vexthari friends. How did humans survive evolution with such useless companions? But there were strange things happening that the aliens had not connected to Pixel. The thefts were getting worse. Entire shipments of food would disappear overnight from locked storage rooms. Security cameras would go offline for hours at a time, showing only static when they came back online. Motion sensors triggered randomly, reporting movement in empty corridors. Commander Zethkar called a meeting in the main conference room. Representatives from all species gathered around the large metal table. The Draconian commander's scales had darkened with stress. "The missing supplies are becoming a serious problem," he said, looking at each alien in turn. "We lost 3 weeks of emergency rations last night. The medical bay reports missing equipment. Even the engineering tools are vanishing." Gorak scratched his furry chin with one massive claw. "Perhaps the humans are taking things? They are new here. Maybe they do not understand our sharing protocols." Dr. Chen shook her head firmly. "All human supplies are accounted for. We keep detailed inventories of everything we use." "What about your pet?" asked Drixnor. "Maybe it is eating our food?" Several aliens laughed at this suggestion. The idea of a 4-kilogram cat eating tons of missing supplies was ridiculous. "Pixel eats standard Earth cat food," Dr. Chen replied calmly. "About 100 grams per day. She could not possibly consume the amount of missing supplies." Zethkar studied the reports on his tablet. "The pattern makes no sense. The thief takes things from different areas each night. Sometimes food, sometimes equipment, sometimes nothing at all. Security finds no evidence of break-ins or forced entry." What the aliens did not know was that Pixel had been conducting her own investigation. While they slept, she roamed the station through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels. Her night vision was perfect in the darkness, and her soft paws made no sound on the metal surfaces. She had found the real thieves 3 days ago. They were not aliens from the station crew. They were native creatures that had somehow gotten inside the facility. The beings were about the size of large dogs, but they moved like spiders. They had 8 legs, ending in sharp claws, and their bodies were covered in thick gray fur. Most importantly, they could change color to match their surroundings. The creatures were intelligent. They had learned the patrol schedules of the security teams. They knew how to disable cameras by chewing through the right cables. They could open storage containers with their claws and carry items back to their nest deep in the station's lower levels. Pixel had followed one of them 2 nights ago. She moved through the air ducts, like liquid shadow, tracking the creature's scent. The alien had no idea it was being hunted by something smaller than its own head. The nest was in an abandoned section of the station. Old mining equipment created a maze of hiding places. The creatures had been living there for months, slowly expanding their territory. They had already claimed 3 levels of the station, and they were getting bolder. Pixel counted at least 6 of the creatures. Maybe more. They communicated with high-pitched sounds that hurt her sensitive ears. When they moved together, they looked like a gray tide flowing through the corridors, but the small cat was not afraid. On Earth, cats regularly hunted animals much larger than themselves. Size meant nothing to a predator with the right skills. While Pixel made her plans, the alien workers continued their jokes. The Krillians brought their own pets to the station for comparison. Gorak introduced his Ironhide, a creature that looked like an armored bear cub. It had thick metal plates covering its back and sides, sharp spikes projected from its shoulders. "This is Crusher," Gorak announced proudly. "He can bite through steel cables. Now let us see how he compares to the mighty human predator." Pixel was sleeping on a supply crate when Crusher approached. The Ironhide sniffed at the small black cat with its wet nose. Pixel opened one green eye, looked at the armored creature for a few seconds, then went back to sleep. The aliens erupted in laughter. "Your beast is too scared to even acknowledge a real predator," Gorak told Dr. Chen. "Perhaps you should feed it vitamins to help with its courage." Dr. Chen just smiled. Pixel chooses her battles carefully. The Vextheri brought their own companions the next day. They were small, flying creatures called buzzer wasps. Each wasp was about 10 centimeters long with bright yellow and black stripes. They could fly at incredible speeds and had stingers that could paralyze creatures 10 times their size. "Now this is a proper predator," Clickstar declared. Small, fast, and deadly. Not like some fur-covered sleeping machine, the wasps flew in circles around Pixel, who was grooming her back leg. She watched them with mild interest but made no move to attack or defend herself. To the aliens, this looked like cowardice. What they could not see was the way Pixel's pupils tracked every movement of the flying creatures. How her muscles tensed slightly when they came close. How her ears swiveled to follow the sound of their wings. She was not afraid. She was calculating distances, timing wing beats, and memorizing flight patterns. If she wanted to catch these wasps, she could do it in seconds, but Pixel had bigger prey to hunt. That night, the thefts reached a new level. The creatures took an entire emergency beacon and somehow removed a section of reinforced wall paneling. Security alarms went off throughout the station, waking everyone from sleep. Commander Zethkar stood in the damaged storage room, staring at claw marks in the metal walls. The scratches were deep and made by something with very sharp talons. "This is not equipment failure," he said grimly. "We have a real problem." As the aliens examined the damage and argued about security protocols, Pixel sat in the shadows and watched. Her tail moved slowly back and forth. Her green eyes reflected the emergency lights. Tonight, she would begin hunting. The emergency meeting happened at dawn. Commander Zethkar looked tired, his green scales dull under the artificial lights. Dark circles showed under his large yellow eyes. The damaged storage room had shaken everyone's confidence. "The claw marks are from something with 8 legs," announced Clickstar, who had studied the scratches with a magnifying scanner. "Each toe has a curved talon, approximately 5 centimeters long. The spacing suggests a creature roughly 1 meter in body length." Gorak shifted his massive weight in his chair. "Could be tunnel rats from the lower mining levels. Sometimes they get into the ventilation systems." "No." Zethkar shook his scaly head. "Tunnel rats leave tooth marks, not claw gouges. This is something else. Something we have not seen before." Dr. Chen listened quietly from her seat at the conference table. Pixel sat on her lap, apparently asleep but actually listening to every word. The cat's ears twitched slightly when the aliens described the claw marks. "We need to increase security patrols," suggested Vorthran. The Etherean's blue form flickered with concern. "Double the guard shifts. Install motion trackers in all storage areas." "Already done," replied the commander. "But whatever these creatures are, they seem to know our patterns. They always strike where we are not watching." What the aliens did not know was that Pixel had been awake all night. While they slept, she had stalked through the maintenance tunnels and air ducts. She had found 3 more of the spider-like creatures and watched them work. The beings were incredibly smart. They moved in coordinated groups, with some acting as scouts, while others carried stolen goods. They communicated with clicks and whistles that sounded like normal station noise to alien ears. Most impressive of all, they could change their skin color to match any surface. One had walked right past a security camera while perfectly mimicking the gray metal wall behind it. Another had hidden from a Krillian patrol by flattening against the ceiling and changing to match the overhead pipes, but their camouflage was useless against a cat. Pixel could smell them from 50 meters away. Their scent was sharp and musky, like wet fur mixed with machine oil. Her hearing picked up the tiny sounds their claws made against metal, even when they tried to move silently. Most importantly, her eyes detected the small movements that gave them away. The twitch of a disguised leg, the flutter of breathing that did not match the stillness around them. The meeting continued for 2 hours. The aliens made plans for security sweeps, motion sensor grids, and automated patrol drones. They talked about sealing ventilation shafts and installing pressure sensors in storage areas. None of their plans would work. The creatures were too smart and too well adapted to the station environment. They had been here for months, learning every hiding place and escape route, but they had never faced a predator like Pixel. That night, the first real confrontation began. Security alarms screamed through Section D at exactly midnight. Red warning lights flashed in the corridors, and automated voices announced "Intruder Alert" in 6 different languages. Heavy footsteps echoed as Krillian guards ran toward the disturbance. In storage room D7, the aliens found chaos. Shelving units had been torn apart. Supply containers were scattered across the floor. Emergency rations, medical supplies, and spare parts were missing. But this time, there was something new. Blood, whispered Drixnor, pointing at dark spots on the metal floor. Not alien blood. Something else. Gorak knelt beside the largest stain and sniffed carefully. Definitely not from any species on this station. Smells wild. Predatory. Commander Zethkar studied the room with his security scanner. The blood trail leads toward the ventilation intake. Whatever we are dealing with, one of them is injured. They followed the trail for 20 meters before it disappeared. The aliens set up a perimeter around the area and waited for dawn to continue their search. What they did not see was the small black shadow moving through the air ducts above their heads. Pixel had found her first target 2 hours earlier. It was a scout creature, smaller than the others, creeping through the maintenance tunnels toward the food storage area. The being thought it was invisible, its skin perfectly matching the blue metal pipes around it. But Pixel could see the outline of its body heat, could hear its breathing, could smell its fear when it suddenly realized something was hunting it. The attack lasted 3 seconds. Pixel dropped from an overhead vent shaft directly onto the creature's back. Her claws extended fully, each one sharp as a surgical blade. She landed precisely between the shoulder joints where the creature's natural armor was weakest. The spider being tried to shake her off, but Pixel had been trained by millions of years of evolution to hold on to struggling prey. Her back claws dug into the creature's sides, while her front claws found the nerve clusters at the base of its neck. One quick bite to the spine, and the creature stopped moving. Pixel dragged the body deeper into the tunnel system, where the aliens would never find it. She was not hungry. Dr. Chen fed her well, but removing the body would confuse the other creatures. They would spend time searching for their missing scout instead of planning their next theft. More importantly, they would know they were being hunted. The next day brought a terrible discovery. The aliens had increased their security patrols. But the thefts continued anyway. Entire sections of the station were being emptied during the night. Power cables were being chewed through. Communication lines went dead for hours at a time. They are getting bolder, Zethkar announced at the emergency briefing. Yesterday they took supplies. Last night they started attacking infrastructure. If this continues, we will lose life support. The stress was showing on everyone. Gorak's fur looked patchy and unkempt. The Vex Thari clicked nervously and kept their compound eyes moving constantly. Even the usually calm Etherians flickered with anxious energy. Only the humans seemed relaxed. Perhaps we should consider evacuation, suggested Vorthron. Call for a transport ship and abandon the station until we can bring military reinforcements. Dr. Chen spoke up from her corner of the room. That might not be necessary. I think the problem will resolve itself soon. The aliens stared at her in disbelief. How could she be so calm when the station was under siege from invisible creatures? What do you mean? Asked Zethkar. These creatures are territorial predators. Dr. Chen explained. They will continue expanding their territory until something stops them. But they have made one critical mistake. What mistake? They entered the territory of another predator. The aliens looked around the room in confusion. What other predator? The only Earth creature on the station was the tiny black cat sleeping on Dr. Chen's lap. That night, Pixel struck again. She had been watching the creature's main nest for 2 days, learning their movement patterns. The beings operated in shifts, with some staying to guard their stolen supplies, while others went out to hunt for more. The nest was in a large maintenance chamber deep in the station's lower levels. Old mining equipment created perfect hiding spots among the shadows. The creatures had made comfortable beds from stolen fabric and food stores from raided supplies. Pixel chose her moment carefully. She waited until most of the hunting party had left, leaving only 2 guards watching the nest. Then, she struck. The first guard never saw her coming. Pixel dropped from a ceiling vent like black lightning, landing on the creature's head. Her claws found the soft spots behind its ears, and it died without making a sound. The second guard heard the body fall and turned to investigate. It saw the dead creature but could not understand what had killed it. The wounds were too precise, too surgical. No alien weapon could make cuts like that. While it puzzled over its dead companion, Pixel circled around through the ventilation system. She came at the second guard from behind, moving like liquid shadow across the metal floor. This creature detected her approach and spun around with claws extended. It was bigger than the first guard, with thicker armor plates covering its vital areas. It thought it could fight the small black predator. It was wrong. Pixel had faced opponents larger than herself thousands of times in her genetic memory. Size meant nothing to a predator with the right skills. She dodged the creature's clumsy swipes and darted between its legs. Her claws found the soft joints where its armor plates connected. The fight lasted 10 seconds. The creature's superior size and strength were useless against Pixel's speed and precision. She left it bleeding on the floor and vanished back into the ventilation system. When the hunting party returned hours later, they found their guards dead and their nest exposed. Panic spread through their ranks. Something was killing them, something they could not see or track. They decided to abandon the lower levels and move their operation to a new location. But Pixel was already waiting for them there. The hunt had truly begun. For 5 days, the mining station existed in a state of controlled panic. Security teams patrolled the corridors in groups, carrying heavy weapons and scanning equipment. They moved slowly and carefully, checking every shadow and corner. They found nothing. "It does not make sense," Gorak complained during the morning briefing. His massive hands gripped his pulse rifle so tightly that the metal frame creaked. "We have sensors in every tunnel, motion detectors on every level. How can these creatures keep avoiding us?" Commander Zethkar looked at the security reports with growing frustration. 3 more storage rooms were hit last night. Food dispensers in Section G were completely stripped. But our patrols saw nothing, heard nothing. The Vexthari security chief, Klixtar, buzzed anxiously as he spoke. "My scouts found blood traces in Maintenance Tunnel C4. Old blood, from at least 2 days ago, but we cannot locate any bodies." Dr. Chen listened to the reports while stroking Pixel's black fur. The cat lay across her lap, purring softly. To the frustrated aliens, the sound was almost mocking. Here they were, dealing with a crisis that could destroy the station, while the humans sat calmly petting her useless companion. "Perhaps the creatures are carrying away their dead," suggested Vorthran. The Etherian's blue form flickered with nervous energy. "Some predators remove wounded pack members to prevent scavengers from tracking them. Or something else is removing the bodies," said Dr. Chen quietly. The aliens turned to look at her. Zethkar's yellow eyes narrowed. "What do you mean? On Earth, we have many examples of apex predators that clean up their kill sites. They remove evidence to avoid attracting competition or alerting other prey." Gorak snorted loudly. "Are you suggesting that something on this station is hunting the creatures that are hunting us? Something we have never seen?" It is possible," Dr. Chen replied calmly. The aliens exchanged glances. The idea seemed ridiculous. Their security systems would detect any predator large enough to kill the spider creatures. Unless, could it be something very small? Asked Drixnor. "Small enough to move through spaces our sensors cannot monitor?" Klixtar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "The ventilation system has thousands of passages too narrow for our security teams. A smaller predator could use those routes to avoid detection." For a moment, several alien eyes turned toward Pixel. The small black cat was cleaning her paw with her pink tongue, completely focused on her grooming. She looked about as threatening as a stuffed toy. The moment of suspicion passed quickly. The idea of a 4-kilogram house cat hunting meter-long armored predators was too absurd to consider seriously. If only they knew the truth. While the aliens held their meetings and planned their patrols, Pixel was conducting a war of extermination in the hidden spaces of the station. She moved through ventilation ducts and maintenance shafts like a black ghost, striking without warning and vanishing without trace. Her hunting strategy was perfect in its simplicity. She had identified the creatures' new nesting sites and marked their travel routes. Then she began picking them off one by one, always when they were isolated and vulnerable. The third creature died in an air recycling chamber, caught alone while trying to disable atmospheric sensors. Pixel dropped from an overhead pipe and ended its life in seconds. She dragged the body to a waste disposal chute, where it would be incinerated with the station's garbage. The fourth and fifth creatures were killed together while they tried to break into the medical bay. They thought they were invisible, their skin perfectly matching the white walls around them. But Pixel could see their heat signatures and hear their rapid breathing. She took the smaller one first, landing on its back and severing its spinal cord before it could make a sound. Its companion turned toward the noise and found itself face to face with glowing green eyes and extended claws. The larger creature tried to fight, swiping at Pixel with its armored talons, but it was too slow and too clumsy. Pixel danced around its attacks like water flowing around stones. Every time it swung at her, she was already somewhere else. She killed it with a precise bite to the throat, and then spent 10 minutes cleaning every drop of blood from her fur. By the end of the week, the alien security teams noticed a change in the pattern of attacks. The thefts were becoming less organized. Items went missing from random locations instead of strategic targets. The creatures seemed confused, striking at pointless objectives like empty storage rooms and abandoned corridors. Their coordination is breaking down, Zethkar observed, studying the latest reports. The attacks are becoming desperate, random. What the commander did not realize was that the creature's leadership was being systematically eliminated. Every scout that went out alone never returned. Every guard that stayed behind to watch the nests disappeared during shift changes. Pixel was not just killing them, she was destroying their ability to function as a group. The remaining creatures began to panic. They started moving their nests every few hours, never staying in one location long enough to establish security. They stopped sending out scouts and began hoarding their stolen supplies instead of seeking new targets. But changing locations did not help them. Pixel's nose could track their scent through the entire station. Her ears could hear their movement from 3 levels away. No matter where they tried to hide, she found them. The 7th creature died while trying to establish a new nest in the mining equipment bay. Pixel cornered it among the massive drilling machines, where its camouflage was useless against the complex background of pipes and cables. The 8th and 9th creatures were killed during an attempted raid on the power station. They thought they could disable the main generators and create chaos to cover their escape. Instead, they walked into a trap. Pixel had been waiting for them in the electrical conduits above the generator room. When they entered, she cut the lights by severing a single cable. In the complete darkness that followed, she was the only one who could see. The creatures stumbled around blindly, calling to each other with panicked whistles. Pixel moved between them like death itself, striking without warning and vanishing without sound. By the time the emergency lights activated, both creatures were dead. She disposed of their bodies in a maintenance shaft where they would never be found. The alien security teams continued their heavy patrols, never knowing they were walking past crime scenes. They carried their weapons and scanners, searching for an enemy that was already being hunted by something far more effective. During the day, Pixel would return to Dr. Chen's quarters and sleep peacefully on the soft bed. She would purr when petted and play with bits of string like any normal house cat. The aliens who saw her had no idea that her claws were still sharp from recent kills, or that her excellent night vision came from millions of years of nocturnal hunting. By the 10th day, only 3 of the original creatures remained alive. They had abandoned all attempts at organized theft and were simply trying to survive. They moved constantly through the darkest parts of the station, never stopping long enough to rest properly. But Pixel was patient. She had all the time in the world. She found the 10th creature hiding in a forgotten storage closet, surrounded by obsolete equipment from the station's early construction. It had been there for hours, trembling with exhaustion and fear. When Pixel appeared in the doorway like a small black demon, the creature did not even try to fight. It simply closed its eyes and waited for death. Pixel granted that mercy quickly and quietly. 2 creatures left. The next morning's security briefing brought unexpected news. For the first time in 2 weeks, no thefts had occurred during the night. No storage rooms had been broken into. No equipment had been damaged. Maybe they are finally moving on, suggested Gorak hopefully. Territorial predators sometimes abandon areas that become too dangerous for hunting. Or maybe they are preparing for something bigger, Zethkar replied grimly. A coordinated attack on a major target. Dr. Chen smiled slightly but said nothing. Pixel sat on her shoulder, green eyes half closed in apparent sleepiness. The aliens continued their discussions, making plans for increased vigilance and enhanced security measures. They had no way of knowing that the threat they feared was already almost completely eliminated. Tonight, Pixel would finish her work. Tonight, the station would finally be safe. The final night began with false hope. For 3 days, no thefts had occurred anywhere on the station. The security teams had started to relax their patrols. Commander Zethkar had even suggested that the creatures might have finally moved on to easier hunting grounds. But the remaining 2 creatures had not left the station. They had been planning. These were the largest and smartest of their kind, the pack leaders who had survived by being more cunning than the rest. They understood that their group had been systematically destroyed by an unknown enemy. Rather than flee, they decided to make one final, desperate attack. Their target was the station's command center. At 0300 hours, while most of the station slept, the creatures began their assault. They had studied the command center's defenses for weeks, watching guard rotations and mapping security sensors. They knew exactly where to strike. The first creature disabled the main security grid by chewing through fiber optic cables in the basement level. Warning lights flickered and died throughout the station. Backup power systems struggled to compensate for the damage. The second creature, larger and more heavily armored, headed directly for Commander Zethkar's private quarters adjacent to the command center. It moved through the corridors with desperate courage, no longer caring about stealth. Its skin had shifted to deep red, a sign of extreme aggression in its species. Zethkar woke to the sound of his door being torn apart. The Draconian commander was a veteran of many conflicts. His combat reflexes activated instantly, and he rolled from his bed toward the weapon locker on the far wall. But the creature was faster. 8 razor-sharp claws raked across Zethkar's back, shredding his sleeping clothes and drawing deep cuts in his scaled hide. He cried out in pain and rage, spinning to face his attacker. The creature was enormous up close, nearly 2 meters long, with armored plates covering most of its body. Its 8 legs moved like pistons, driving it forward with terrible speed. Its mouth opened to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth. Zethkar's hand closed on his pulse rifle just as the creature leaped at his throat. The weapon fired 3 times, filling the small room with brilliant flashes of energy. But the creature's natural armor deflected the shots. Sparks flew from its hide as the energy bolts scattered harmlessly away. Emergency alarms began screaming throughout the station. Alien voices shouted in the corridors as security teams rushed toward the command center. But they were too far away to help. The creature's claws found Zethkar's chest, punching through his scales like they were paper. The commander fell backward, his rifle skittering across the floor. Dark blood pooled beneath his massive body. The creature raised itself on its hind legs, preparing to deliver the killing blow to the fallen Draconian. That was when Pixel entered the room. She dropped from an air vent in the ceiling, landing silently on the floor behind the creature. Her small black form looked impossibly tiny compared to the armored predator that towered above the wounded commander. For a moment, the scene was perfectly still. The creature focused on its prey. Zethkar lay bleeding on the cold floor, and Pixel crouched in the shadows, every muscle in her small body coiled like a spring. The attack, when it came, was too fast for alien eyes to follow. Pixel launched herself through the air like a black missile, covering 3 meters in a single leap. She landed precisely on the creature's neck, just below its armored head. Her claws extended to their full length and drove deep into the soft tissue between the armor plates. The creature tried to shake her off, spinning and bucking like a mad animal. But Pixel had done this dance many times before. Her claws locked into the creature's nerve clusters, and her teeth found the exact spot where the spinal cord met the brain. One quick bite, perfectly placed, and the massive creature collapsed. It hit the floor with a crash that shook the entire room. Its legs twitched once, then went still, forever. Pixel sat on the dead creature's back, calmly cleaning blood from her whiskers with her pink tongue. That was how the security teams found them when they finally reached the command center. Gorak and Klixtar burst through the destroyed doorway with weapons ready, expecting to find their commander's body. Instead, they found Zethkar propped against the wall, pressing emergency bandages to his wounds. Beside him lay the largest predator any of them had ever seen, with 4 precise puncture wounds at the base of its skull. And sitting on top of the dead creature was a small black cat, grooming herself as if nothing had happened. "Impossible," whispered Gorak, his massive hands shaking as he lowered his rifle. "That thing could have killed all of us. How did a tiny cat—" He could not finish the sentence. Dr. Chen arrived a few minutes later, having been woken by the emergency alarms. She took one look at the scene and nodded with satisfaction. "Good girl, Pixel," she said, scratching the cat behind her ears. Pixel purred and rubbed against her hand. The other aliens stared in shock and disbelief. The creature on the floor weighed at least 60 kilograms. Its armor plates were thick enough to deflect energy weapons. Its claws could slice through metal doors, and it had been killed by a house cat. "I do not understand," Zethkar said weakly as Vorthron treated his wounds. "How is this possible? That creature was a perfect killing machine." Dr. Chen smiled and picked up Pixel, who immediately curled up in her arms. "So is she. You just never realized it. But she is so small," protested Drixnor. "She weighs nothing. She has no armor, no weapons, no. She has 40 million years of evolution," Dr. Chen interrupted. "Pixel is descended from apex predators that survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, and asteroid impacts. Her ancestors hunted creatures much larger than themselves and won every time." She held up the small black cat so everyone could see her clearly. "Look at her eyes. Those pupils can dilate to absorb every photon of available light. She can see perfectly in total darkness. Her hearing can detect sounds you cannot even imagine. Her reflexes are faster than your security computers." Pixel's green eyes reflected the emergency lights as she looked at each alien in turn. "Most importantly," Dr. Chen continued, "she thinks like a predator. Every movement, every breath, every heartbeat. She analyzes it all for weaknesses. When she attacks, it is with millions of years of killing instinct behind every strike." Gorak shook his massive head slowly. "All this time, we thought she was harmless. We made jokes." "She let you make jokes," Dr. Chen corrected, "because she did not see you as threats. But when something actually dangerous entered her territory, she dealt with it." Clickstar's mandibles clicked nervously. "The missing supplies. The blood traces we could never explain. She was hunting them all along." "Every single one," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Pixel eliminated the entire pack except for this last creature. She turned what could have been a station-destroying invasion into a minor security incident." Over the following hours, as repairs were made and medical teams treated Zethkar's wounds, the full scope of Pixel's war became clear. Security teams found the second creature's body in the basement level, killed while trying to sabotage the power grid. Blood traces throughout the ventilation system told the story of a systematic campaign of elimination. The aliens began to understand that they had been living alongside one of the most efficient predators in the galaxy, and they had never even suspected. Word spread quickly to other stations and ships throughout the sector. Within days, new protocols were established for dealing with human companion animals. Security briefings included warnings about Earth predators disguised as harmless pets. Commander Zethkar recovered fully from his wounds. During his rehabilitation, he often watched Pixel sleeping peacefully on Dr. Chen's desk. The small black cat would purr contentedly, completely unaware that she had become legendary throughout the alien space community. The mining operation continued without further incident. The humans integrated well with the alien crews, their expertise proving valuable in the dangerous excavation work. But there were no more jokes about human weakness or Earth creatures. Dr. Chen submitted her regular reports to the Mining Council, describing atmospheric conditions, soil composition, and biological surveys. She never mentioned the predator invasion or Pixel's role in stopping it. As far as official records showed, the security problems had simply resolved themselves. But late at night, when the station was quiet and most of the crew slept, alien workers would sometimes see a small black shadow moving through the corridors. Pixel would pad silently through her territory, Green eyes alert, ears swiveling to catch every sound. The aliens no longer saw a cute pet when they looked at her. They saw what she had always been. A perfect killing machine, wrapped in black fur and carried in human arms, and they made sure to keep their own pets far away from her path. In the vast networks of spacefaring civilization, new rules were quietly established. Human companions were reclassified as potential security assets. Training protocols included sections on Earth predator behavior. Insurance policies were updated to include companion animal incidents. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. They did not survive by being the strongest, or fastest, or most heavily armed species. They survived by making friends with the creatures that were, and sometimes, those friends were very small, very quiet, and very, very dangerous. Pixel never knew about any of this. She continued her simple life of sleeping, playing, and keeping her human company. Occasionally, she would catch a maintenance drone or investigate an interesting smell in the ventilation system, but the station remained perfectly safe. Because everyone now understood what Dr. Chen had tried to tell them from the beginning, Pixel earned her place there.